For decades, Machu Picchu has been a symbol of mystery, history, and spirituality. Millions of tourists have walked its ancient stone paths, amazed by the Inca ruins and the clouds that touch the mountains like they're hiding ancient secrets. But not everyone who makes it there comes back. In the winter of 1989, a young European tourist named Eric Vandal disappeared without a trace during an otherwise normal visit to this historic site. He was 27 years old, from the Netherlands, traveling alone with a backpack, a film camera, and a small notebook where he recorded every discovery, almost like keeping a personal archaeological diary that led him to the sacred city. One of the strangest and most baffling cases ever recorded in the Cusco region came to an end. Eric was staying at a small inn in Aguas Calientes, a tiny village at the foot of the mountain. There, he sat at the table with other travelers, laughed with the innkeepers, and expressed his excitement about exploring remote areas along the old Inca Trail. He wasn't a reckless adventurer or a beginner. He had studied pre-Columbian history and spoke decent Spanish. According to records, he had a legal permit to enter the archaeological site. Yet, on the morning of July 3, 1989, he left the inn early with his gear and never came back. After that, the local authorities started a limited search, initially thinking he might have just gotten lost. But as time went on and Eric didn't show up, the fear grew that something much darker was hiding in the forest. What worried everyone even more was that his backpack was found a week later in a hard-to-reach area, more than 3 hours off the tourist trail. It was closed, showed no signs of violence, and still had his diary and camera inside. The film wasn't developed yet, and an old compass marked with strange symbols that didn't appear on any known map. No one understood why he had left the allowed trails or what happened next. What made him go deep into an area locals say you should avoid? Some said he was a victim of an accident, others talked about thieves, but the wildest stories believed he woke up something that should have stayed asleep. Over time, his disappearance turned into a legend. But what nobody knew was that this story wasn't over yet. 15 years later, in 2004, deep in the forest near Palcabamba, an expedition uncovered something that would change everything people thought about the case. Before we dive into this exciting story, tell me, what country and city are you listening from right now? You might be closer to this mystery than you think. In May 2004, a group of independent researchers, led by Peruvian biologist Alvaro Maita and funded by a German environmental protection foundation, entered a forest near Bacabamba to study native plant species. None of the team had any idea they were about to stumble upon a clue that would lead straight to one of the strangest disappearance cases from the 1980s in a narrow valley covered in algae. While searching for a type of wild fruit orchard, one of the assistants noticed a hidden structure among the tree roots. It wasn't a cave or a natural formation, but a primitive shelter made of stacked stones and branches. A tangled, dry mess, carefully woven together, and someone who tried to take shelter from the weather inside this tiny structure. They found what was left of a backpack covered in mold, a badly damaged old camera, some scraps of cloth, and a rusty metal box engraved with the initials EVD. The researchers sent the items to Cusco for analysis. Then, a local anthropologist mysteriously remembered the story of Eric Vandal's disappearance and linked the initials to the case from 1999. Within days, the news leaked to the local press, a possible discovery of the remains of the tourist missing for 15 years in Vilcabamba. What seemed like a forgotten echo from the past suddenly resurfaced. But what annoyed Aktish the most wasn't the bag or the camera, but what was in the notebook, which was still readable and wrapped in a piece of cloth sealed with wax, even though it had been damaged by moisture. Its pages revealed a series of notes no one expected. Without Eric knowing, he felt like he was being followed by invisible forces and mentioned hearing nighttime chants coming from areas where no one was supposed to be. On one of the last pages, he wrote, "I'm not alone. Something is watching me. I don't understand what I've discovered, but it's not nothing." These words sent chills down everyone's spine who read them. What did Eric find in that corner of the forest, and why did he seem more and more convinced that what he saw didn't belong to our time? That discovery didn't close the case, it only made it bigger. Whispers started again, theories began to multiply. Was it a crime, or a voluntary disappearance? Or, as some said, was there something buried deep in Andean history that should never have been uncovered? Eric had disappeared searching for answers, and after 15 years, his words only left more questions. After finding Eric Vandal's notebook, international media interest in Peru surged again. The Ministry of Culture ordered a forensic analysis of the recovered content, and a specialized team in preserving old documents took on the task of restoring the pages one by one. They found it went beyond all logical expectations. Among the notes were hand-drawn maps and references to coordinates that didn't match any known tourist routes, along with symbols never seen before in any local culture. Some looked like pre-Inca symbols, while others seemed inspired by shamanic rituals. The last pages of the notebook were badly damaged, but experts managed to salvage parts. One part said, "I saw faces inside the stone. This isn't a dream. They've been here since before time was known." Another part said, "If anything happens to me, no one should follow this path. This isn't a fate meant for us." These phrases were loaded with mystery. The mystery sparked the imagination of researchers and conspiracy theorists alike. Theories popped up like mushrooms after rain, from lost civilizations to hidden portals in the mountains. In the Netherlands, the Vandals family came back into the spotlight. Eric's parents, now elderly and skeptical at first, had lived 15 years of pain without answers or justice. But after seeing the notebook and confirming the handwriting was their son's, they agreed to travel to Peru to join an expedition following the discovered coordinates. Eric's mother, with tears in her eyes, told a Dutch reporter who accompanied them, "If there's any chance to understand what happened to Eric, we'll see it through to the end." That's when a multidisciplinary team was formed. Linguistic archaeologists who specialize in pre-Spanish cultures, along with a European film crew, were ready to head to the Belcapampa area, a place they were about to discover. This wasn't just about shedding light on Eric's disappearance, it was about sounding a silent alarm in the scientific community. Some stories we've always thought of as myths might just be distorted memories of events that actually happened and haven't ended yet. The expedition set off at dawn on September 7, 2004, from Cusco toward the Belcapampa forests. The team, equipped with the latest gear, thermal cameras, drones, and weeks' worth of supplies, also included a local shaman who was consulted by the villagers. He spoke quietly as he looked on. "To the mountains, this place isn't for tourists. It's like he sees things others don't." What started as just a nature trail grew quieter and heavier with every kilometer. Trees crowded the sky, and the feeling of being watched got stronger. Even the most skeptical team members felt it. On the third day, they found their first clue. An old, small fire turned to ash and a torn piece of fabric like the kind Eric used to carry on his backpack in the 80s. But what worried the team the most was an engraving carved into a nearby rock, hidden behind thick bushes. It wasn't a fresh mark. It looked ancient, but in a style no one could quite place. None of the archaeologists could precisely identify it, but it was a symbol shaped like an inverted spiral surrounded by small, faceless human figures. When the shaman saw it, he muttered something in Quechua and refused to go on. He said this place was a gateway, and whoever opens it never returns. Despite his warnings, the rest of the team decided to continue. They used the coordinates in the notebook to venture further than any path marked on modern maps. That's when the strange phenomena began. Electronic devices malfunctioned for no clear reason. The compass spun in circles, and faint whispers, barely audible as if carried by the wind, could be heard. At night, some team members started having intense dreams about masked creatures, sunken ruins, and Eric Vandal with empty eyes, urging them to come back. The tension hit its peak on the 7th day when, through the fog, they saw what looked like a doorway carved into the rock, partly covered with plant roots and moss. It wasn't recorded in any archaeological archive, and its design didn't match any known Andean culture. Carved above it, with eerie precision, was the same upside-down spiral symbol they'd seen a few days earlier. At that moment, something in the air shifted. The whole forest fell silent. There were no birds, no insects, just their breathing and a distant echo. Something was creeping in slowly. No one said it out loud, but everyone thought the same thing. Eric Vandal had found this place before them, and something, maybe something that shouldn't be seen, was what kept him there. Going into that building was a tough call for the team. Some wanted to wait, study, and document, while others felt an irresistible urge, like something or someone was pushing them to go in. In the end, 4 members went through the entrance, carrying lamps and cameras, nerves so tight it felt like the air was crushing their chests. Inside, it was pitch dark, smooth, cold stone walls covered in symbols that looked like tiny spirals. There were regularly sized and repeated patterns, no spider webs, no insects, no signs of life, just silence and something else, a faint vibration. The whole place seemed to be breathing. After 5 minutes of exploring, someone tripped over something on the ground. When they shone a light on it, their eyes widened. It was a water bottle with an engraved inscription. Despite the rust, the words were still clear. E. Vandel, 1989. It looked like someone had purposely left it there. Nearby, under a thin layer of dirt and dust, they found what looked like some kind of altar. Carefully placed on top were several items: a notebook with wet pages, a broken Polaroid camera, and a small stone figure of a faceless face. It was still possible to... I read some writings in the notebook, and on the last page, there was a rushed, messy note. If you find this, don't wake him up. That's when the atmosphere got heavy. A faint buzzing started echoing down the hallways, quiet at first, then louder, almost like a distant wail. Their lights flickered, and suddenly the temperature dropped. One of the explorers, the youngest, turned to the end of the corridor and muttered, "Did you see that?" No one answered, but everyone felt it. The air pressure changed, like something had awakened as soon as they arrived. They rushed out of the building, holding only the notebook and a bottle. Outside, the shaman was waiting for them, standing still with eyes closed. And you saw them finish their prayers, and when he saw what they brought, he shook his head and said just one sentence. "You didn't find him. He's the one who called you that night." The team camped in silence. No one ate, no one spoke. In their dreams, everyone saw Eric again, but not as he was before, thinner, paler, and smiling. The next morning, the shamans had disappeared. When the team left the forest, exhausted and marked by something they couldn't put into words, they were met with silence. Then the story exploded. A drone, without a pilot, had appeared days earlier, broadcast by a European TV channel showing footage of the hidden temple, the spiral symbol, and the extracted coordinates. But what shocked everyone the most was, one of the photos from inside the temple showed in the dark a human shadow standing at the end of the corridor, watching. Soon, the press dubbed the site Eric's Tomb. The notebook was wiped, analyzed, and widely circulated. Experts in ancient scripts, anthropology, and psychology studied it as if it were a sacred text. Some said Eric was a victim of an ancient cult. Others believed he had discovered a hidden society practicing isolation rituals. But the creepiest theory came from a German linguist who said the symbols on the walls didn't belong to any known language, or even any human language. He added that their structure resembled a binary code system, which suggests it's a communication device that's not terrestrial. In the Netherlands, Eric's family received his belongings in a private ceremony. His mother, touching the bottle with tears in her eyes, said, "He's still here." She wasn't talking about a place, but about that feeling everyone involved in this story had, something no one could really name. Some team members, a week after they got back, started having the same dreams. They'd be walking alone in the forest, and at some point, a voice would whisper their names. One of them, the camera operator, later disappeared from his home. His phone was found replaying a distorted audio recording on loop, something caught on a tape found on the altar. The government decided, The Peruvian authorities closed off access to the area, declaring it a protected zone for cultural reasons. But despite that, secret videos and testimonies from locals started popping up online, talking about lights floating among the trees, eerie night songs not made by human voices, and shadows moving silently like a willful fog. Then, the last piece of the puzzle appeared, a new message dated 1994, addressed to BI, that reached the Dutch embassy in Lima. The envelope was damaged, like it had been buried for years. The message said, "Don't try to bring me back. I no longer belong to your time, but I'm still watching." As the message signed BI spread worldwide, the mystery deepened. A new chapter began. What used to be just a disappearance case turned into a global phenomenon. Social media exploded with groups discussing the hidden meanings behind the message, and a disturbing theory popped up on forums. Eric didn't just survive in the forest. He accessed some ancient knowledge given only to the chosen ones. His name started showing up in murals, songs, and tattoos as a symbol of crossing over and connecting with hidden truths. In France, Germany, and the US, communities calling themselves the Guardians of Vilcabamba formed. These people claimed they had dreams similar to what the exploration team saw, a voice speaking in languages they couldn't understand, calling them from deep within the forest. A Japanese writer named Bismaya published a book called Eric the Gatekeeper. It sold millions of copies and was translated into over 20 languages. In it, he suggests that the Dutch young man was chosen by a sleeping planetary consciousness that wakes up now and then to fix humanity's mistakes. Meanwhile, Eric's mother became a public figure through interviews, even though she never sought fame. She used to say, "I don't want fame. I just don't want to be forgotten," her eyes staring into space. In one of those interviews, Eric's mother showed a small stone she received in the mail with no sender, months after returning from Peru. It matched the stones found in the altar they had discovered. In the temple, there was a hand-carved spiral, according to her. "When I touched it, I felt like her son was nearby." What was even more unsettling was that the stone started to emit a faint buzzing sound at night. The concerned governments, including Burundi, pushed to reopen the investigations. Analytical space missions were organized to the Belcamba area. During one of these flights, something unexpected happened. A human figure was spotted walking alone in a deserted part of the forest, right where Eric's notebook was found. Despite the blurry image, it showed a shadow wearing what looked like a white robe. When zoomed in, it seemed like the figure was turning around. The camera smiled, and despite attempts to cover up the photo, it leaked to the public and was labeled by the media as a monk from Belcampa. Some thought it was Eric, others believed it was an impersonator, but most agreed that something had happened. What happened in 1989 didn't end. It was actually about to begin. While mysterious images kept coming from satellites, official investigations got stuck under piles of bureaucracy. But what was even more worrying started to take shape. Local guides, many descended from the Quechua communities, refused to enter certain parts of the forest. "Here, the forest breathes," they said, repeating it with anxiety and fear. Their stories all sounded the same. Animals running away for no clear reason, trees bleeding thick sap when cut, an onion spinning out of control, and whispers coming from nowhere, or maybe everywhere. One of these middlemen, named Juan Ayala, was talking to a Western journalist investigating Eric's case. While walking, he suddenly stopped at a stone carving hidden under dry leaves. The stone was about the size of a notebook and had the same snail symbol that was found on the altar years ago, surrounded by symbols no one could decipher. But the real problem happened that night at the camp. All the lights went out at once, the batteries died within minutes, and fog rolled in. Despite the sky being completely clear, the journalist managed to record part of the event using an old recorder. Although the sound was damaged due to humidity, you can clearly hear a woman whispering in French, repeating the same phrase, "Je suis encore là, je suis encore là," meaning "I'm still here." When this was presented to sound experts, one of them, a pale man who used to work in intelligence, recognized the wave pattern as similar to those used in secret military broadcasts from the 1980s. Since then, many have linked Eric's case to secret experiments, portals between dimensions, or even contact with something the modern world barely understands. The truth is, since that night, the journalist pulled out of the project, sold everything, and disappeared from public life. Rumors spread that he was living in a monastery deep in the Swiss Alps, without internet or a phone, and that he hadn't been sleeping well at all. The scientific community split into two groups. Some dismissed all the stories as a series of coincidences dressed up by popular imagination, while others, including anthropologists and experts in folklore, examined ancient texts and colonial records. Many documents talked about chosen ones who crossed the forest without dying, people who entered the woods and never came back, yet their presence still somehow showed up in unbelievable ways. One of those texts was said to describe a place where time bends and the soul is tested. Nowadays, some scientists believe that Eric Van Daele didn't just disappear, he was actually summoned back in 2004 after being missing for 15 years. A research team led by Peruvian archaeologist Dr. Nicolas Zalamora returned to the forbidden area in the forest where satellite images had revealed strange anomalies. The mission was funded by a private Swiss foundation whose representatives refused to comment, only saying they were following forgotten coordinates. What they found defied all known logic, about 70 kilometers from the last known location of Eric in the area. Even the drones couldn't fly over it. They discovered a hidden cave behind a rockfall. Inside the cave, protected by layers of moisture, algae, and darkness, there was an altar carved directly into the living rock. But what was even more shocking was a creature placed on a central stone, and a travel journal still intact, its cover soaked with moisture but readable. On the first page, there was a handwritten Dutch sentence: "If you find this, it means I managed to see it." There was no doubt. The journal belonged to Eric Van Daele. The handwriting and dates matched. But what seemed impossible was that the last entry was dated 1900. 194. About 5 years after he disappeared, he described discovering an invisible path, not seen with the eyes, but felt when breathing. He said he stopped feeling hungry, time didn't pass as usual, and he began dreaming of his childhood even though he never slept. Another page described human-like beings made of light, wordless chants, and a living gate that opens when you accept leaving everything you once were. The last entrance was almost unreadable. It said, "I am not lost, I am closer than ever." What was even more surprising was that despite signs of aging, the notebook was free of mold and insects, as if it had been placed there only days ago. Sent to labs in Europe tested the carbon-14 and confirmed the pages were from 1988, but the ink didn't match any known brand. A German chemist reported an unusual compound not made by humans at that time. This info was hidden from the public, and the Peruvian government declared the area a critical archaeological site, closing all entrances. A picture from the notebook showing an engraving-like background quickly spread on conspiracy forums before it was taken down from the internet. The Swiss institution involved disappeared and left no trace in Latin America. But for those who followed the case from the start, the picture was everything. There's enough proof that Eric was there, and maybe he's still there to this day. Eric Van Daele's disappearance remains one of the most baffling mysteries in the history of tourism in Peru. There's no body, no witnesses, and no solid evidence about what really happened. All that's left is a notebook, some photos from his obsession, and a path closed off by official silence. Despite the time that's passed, his family hasn't set foot in South America again. Every year on the anniversary of his kidnapping, his older sister Ingrid posts the same line on a Dutch forum: "I'm still waiting for you where the world ends." But then, in 2019, Hao Wen took some strange photos using his plane's landing gear. A drone near the edge of the restricted area in Fuchsia, surrounded by fog, captured a tall figure wearing a dirty white shirt. She lifted her face and raised her hand like she was waving. The photo was posted online but deleted in less than 24 hours, and the account that posted it stopped sharing anything else. However, someone managed to save the picture before it was deleted. The eyes in the photo are said to look like Eric's in his profile picture, with a shy smile. Others claimed it was fake or a trick, but experts studying it for years agreed there was a detail on the figure's wrist, a shiny handmade bracelet in blue and red that matched. The bracelet his mom gave him before he left for Peru. Sometimes mysteries don't need solving to stay alive. Some, like this one, seem made to remind us that not everything in the world has an explanation, and some paths only open for those ready to get lost on them. As long as someone still remembers his name, Eric Vandal will keep walking those mountains.